Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW All In review. And yes, I decided to do a review of All In, but what a fantastic show this was yesterday. Just a great atmosphere there in Wembley in London. The wrestling was really good, and just overall, it was an amazing show. I'd say it was a 10 out of 10 show. But going to go over the matches here, the card. For the 0 hour, for the All In 0 hour, we had MJF and Adam Cole versus Aussie Open for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship. We had the FTW Championship on the line. Hook versus Jack Perry. This was, of course, FTW Rules match. Then we had CM Punk versus Samoa Joe for the real AEW World Championship. These are the regular matches that were on the card. So we had J.Y. Juice Robinson and Konosuke Takeshita. They took on Kenny Omega, Hangman and Page, and Kota Ibushi. The AEW World Tag Team Championship was on the line, where FTR defended titles against the Young Bucks. We had the Stadium Stampede match, where it was Orange Cassidy, Penta Miedo, the Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, and Eddie Kingston versus the Blackpool Combat Club, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, and also Mike Santana and Ortiz. Of course, we had the women's four-way match for the AEW Women's World Championship. Saraya versus Hikaru Shida versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and Toni Storm. We had the Coffin match. It was a tag team Coffin match. Darby, Allin, and Sting ended up taking on Swerve, Strickland and Christian Cage. We had Chris Jericho ended up taking on Will Ospreay. We had the AEW World Trios Championship on the line, where the House of Black defended the titles against the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. And the main event, the AEW World Championship was on the line. MJF defended the title against Adam Cole. So yeah, but overall, All In was just a fantastic show from beginning to end. Great atmosphere there in Wembley in London. And they are going back to Wembley next year for All In August. So that is amazing. This show felt like AEW's own WrestleMania, in my opinion. But anyways, let's jump right into the review. Going to start with the two matches on the All In 0 hour. So the first match was Aussie Open, Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher versus MJF and Adam Cole for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship. Very good match this was, and MJF and Adam Cole, just great team together, and really like their bonding segments, which are really hilarious. So Mark Davis, Kyle Fletcher, they end up attacking MJF and Adam Cole before the match got underway. And then, as the match got underway, after the bell rang, Mark Davis, Kyle Fletcher took charge, and they ended up restricting MJF from tagging in Adam Cole. MJF eventually tagged in Adam Cole. We had MJF also landing that kangaroo kick, which was hilarious at how he was like... So he eventually landed the kangaroo kick on both Davis and Fletcher. So MJF and Adam Cole delivered their double clothesline on Fletcher. And then, there you go. MJF and Adam Cole ended up winning the match. They are your new Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions. Which obviously, had a chance that they were going to win the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship. So it was good on MJF and Adam Cole there. And when MJF ended up landing that kangaroo kick, the crowd just erupted at that. So, but overall, it was a very good match. Really, I'm glad that MJF and Adam Cole won the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship. So then we had Jack Perry versus Hook. FTW rules match, FTW Championship on the line. Very good match here. We had Jack Perry and Hook brawled on the stage. Jack Perry ended up coming out. He ended up making his entrance in a limousine. So Jack Perry ended up delivering a suplex to Hook on top of the limousine, which was great. What was really funny was when Hook went at it at Jack Perry, the limousine driver just ran right out of the limousine, which was hilarious. So then Hook ended up sending Jack Perry into the windshield. He suplexed Perry into the windshield, which the windshield ended up breaking. And there was a report that Jack Perry and CM Punk had a physical confrontation before Punk's match with Samoa Joe, which kicked off All In. So apparently, Sean Ross Sapp reported via Twitter or X that Punk and Jack Perry had a physical confrontation that also involved yelling right before Punk went through the curtain for his opening match against Samoa Joe. And additionally, PW Insider Elite reported that there was altercation involving Perry and Punk, with several sources claiming that Punk went after or even hit Perry, although those stories are varying at this point. Apparently, there was a point in the matchup here with Jack Perry and Hook where Perry was, by the glass of the limousine, and he ended up stating, "Oh, it's real glass. Cry me a river." And this was apparently a dig at CM Punk because Perry wanted to use real glass in a segment on AEW Collision. But apparently Perry was upset that the glass part of that segment had to be nixed because Punk spoke out against it. So it's been well documented that Punk has asserted himself as the leader of Collision. So, but pretty much that was basically the news there. So it was real glass that was used on the limousine. So Perry was right, about that when he said it's real glass, cry me a river. So yeah, another physical confrontation that CM Punk had in AEW right before his match with Samoa Joe. And apparently Jack Perry had to leave Wembley after this altercation. So, but very crazy with that news. So back to the matchup here. There was a point later on in the match where Perry wanted to do the coast to coast on Hook, but he didn't do it. So he ended up flipping off the people. He ended up flipping off the fans. So at the end of the match, Hook ended up locking in the Red Rum on Jack Perry. Perry ended up tapping. So there you go. Hook ended up winning the match, and he is the new FTW champion. So he brought the FTW championship back to him and Taz. And I'm like, looking back on this, I'm like, was it really needed for Jack Perry to win the FTW championship? He just took the title and then, lost it here. And he just recently won it. I'm like, so what was the point on putting the FTW championship on Jack Perry? But overall, good match this was between Jack Perry and Hook. So then we move on to the regular card, so All In opened up with the real AEW World Championship on the line. CM Punk defended the title against Samoa Joe, and very good match this was. Both Punk and Joe gave it all they got here. They worked really well. So, match started off with Punk and Joe staring each other down. We had 81,000 fans. It was confirmed that 81,000 fans were in attendance at Wembley for All In. And they were cheering Punk and Joe on. And then Punk and Joe locked up. So we had Punk end up finding himself scrambling to escape out of the corner from Joe. So Punk and Joe end up locking up again. They headed into the corner. Punk delivered a chop to Joe, which Joe seemed unfazed by that chop from Punk. So Punk ended up locking in a side headlock on Joe. He ended up bringing Joe down to his knee. So we had Samoa Joe end up dropping Punk with a back suplex. So Punk and Joe end up headed to the outside. Joe ended up beating down on Punk on the outside. So Joe ended up coming back in. He started laying chops to Punk. So Punk ended up catching Joe against the ropes. Joe ended up getting caught with a hurricanrana by Punk, which sent him out of the ring. Joe ended up dodging a springboard crossbody attempt from Punk. So Joe was now in control of the match. He ended up going to work on Punk. So Punk ended up countering by sending Joe's shoulder first into the ring post. Punk was looking to go for the hurricanrana off the apron to Joe, but Joe ended up driving Punk into the commentary table. Joe ended up driving Punk to the bottom of the commentary table, which that fake plastic on the bottom broke. So that busted CM Punk open. So we had Punk end up sliding back into the ring behind Joe. Punk was trying to fight Joe until Joe ended up going right back to attack Punk. So Joe set Punk up, but we had Punk end up fighting back. So we had Joe end up laying out Punk with a boot and then a senton. So Joe ended up going for the cover, and Punk ended up kicking out. Joe took Punk back to the corner to deliver another chop, and Joe was looking to go for the muscle buster. Punk slipped out of that, and we had Joe end up delivering a roundhouse kick to Punk. So we had Punk and Joe end up getting back up to their feet. So Punk ended up hitting Joe with some shoulder tackles. And so then Punk ended up referencing John Cena, where he ended up slamming Joe. He ended up going like that. And then Punk ended up referencing Hulk Hogan, because after he did the John Cena thing where it's like that, I thought he was going to do "You Can't See Me," but then he goes for hearing like that in reference of Hulk Hogan, to which Punk ended up going to the ropes, and he laid a leg drop down to Joe. So I like the references there that Punk did for John Cena and Hulk Hogan there. Doing the famous, Hogan leg drop. So Joe ended up catching Punk with some punches, and then he delivered a power slam to Punk. So Joe ended up going for the cover. Punk kicked out. So Joe ended up doing an armbar, which got pushed into a pin, to which Punk ended up kicking out. But Joe ended up transitioning from a powerbomb to an STF on Punk. So Punk rolled Joe onto his shoulders for a near fall to break up the hold. Punk set Joe up for a spinning toe hold. Shades of Terry Funk there in honor of Terry Funk. But Joe ended up pulling him in for a near fall. So Punk got back to his feet. He was looking to go for a run knee strike to Joe, but he ended up getting taken down by Joe. Joe ended up sending Punk up for another muscle buster attempt, but Punk dropped off the turnbuckle. Joe ended up catching Punk, but this time he ended up bringing Punk up for an avalanche brainbuster, Punk ended up taking a bite out of Joe's head, which was crazy. Punk set Joe up on the turnbuckle, and Punk delivered the Pepsi plunge on Joe. So Punk ended up going for the cover, and there you go. CM Punk ended up winning the match, retaining the AEW Real World's Championship. Post-match, Punk celebrated, and he headed up the ramp and to the back, and that was that. But overall, very good match this was. Punk and Joe just delivered here. The crowd was really into it, and Punk and Joe worked really well. So but overall, good match it was. Good wrestling here from the both of them. So then we had the Golden Elite, Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, and Hangman Page versus Bullet Club Gold, Juice Robinson, Jay White, and Konosuke Takeshita. And this was a decent match here. So we had Bullet Club Gold. They ended up making their way out to the ring. Out next was Konosuke Takeshita. Takeshita was accompanied by Don Callis. So we had Hangman Page end up coming out, which Hangman Page got a big ovation from the crowd there in Wembley. And Kota Ibushi got the same reaction as well. It was good to see Kota Ibushi again. And then Kenny Omega ended up making his way out. So the match got underway. Don Callis was on commentary here. So he had a stare down between all 6 guys. So we had Hangman Page and Juice Robinson end up locking up. Juice Robinson ended up getting taken down with a shoulder tackle from Page. Robinson ended up fighting back. And then Page ended up getting a tag to Omega. So Page and Omega end up double teaming on Juice Robinson back and forth. Omega ended up staying on the attack on Juice Robinson. Kota Ibushi ended up tagging himself in. Juice Robinson pulled himself away and then tagged in Jay White. So we had Jay White and Kota Ibushi in the ring. White and Ibushi locked up. And Jay ended up getting a shoulder tackle on Ibushi, to which Ibushi got back to his feet. And then Jay White ended up just disrespecting Ibushi. Ibushi ended up not taking kindly to that. Jay White ended up delivering some forearm strikes to Ibushi, but Ibushi ended up taking Jay White down. Jay ended up getting sent to the corner as Omega ended up tagging back in. So we had Ibushi and Omega end up double teaming on Jay White. Takeshita ended up getting involved. He ended up making the tag, but Takeshita ended up getting taken down by Omega. We had Omega end up hitting a big dive to the outside, which was great. Omega continued the attack, but Juice Robinson ended up getting a tag in. So Juice Robinson ended up taking Kenny Omega down. So we had Juice Robinson end up coming back in. So Juice Robinson and Jay White end up double teaming on Omega. Ibushi ended up running in for the save, but Ibushi ended up getting taken out by Bullet Club Gold. And then they went back to attack Omega. So Hangman Page ended up coming in to save Omega, but he was sent to the outside. So Takeshita ended up tagging back in. Takeshita ended up going right back to work on Omega. Takeshita ended up dropping Omega down to the canvas, and then Takeshita tagged Jay White back in. Omega was able to start fighting back, but Jay White ended up taking Omega down with a dragon screw. So Jay White ended up taunting Omega. So Jay White ended up tagging in Juice Robinson. Juice Robinson ended up going to work on Omega's legs, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Omega ended up kicking out. So Omega and Juice Robinson were trading blows at this point. Juice Robinson was looking to go for the left hand of God. So Juice ended up laying a big hand and a boot to Omega. He ended up going for the cover, and Omega ended up kicking out. Omega ended up hitting the suplex on Juice as Omega was looking to go for a tag to Ibushi, but Juice ended up pulling Omega away. So Omega end up leaping to his corner for a tag to Ibushi, but the Guns, Austin and Colton, end up pulling down Ibushi. So a little bit later, Omega was finally able to tag in Hangman and Page. Page ended up clearing the ring out. He ended up bringing Jay White back into the ring, and Page ended up climbing the turnbuckle for a big leg drop to Jay White. He ended up going for the cover, and Jay White ended up kicking out. Page ended up bringing Jay White to his feet to hit the dead eye, but Jay ended up slipping out. Ibushi made the blind tag as Jay ended up leapfrogging Page. So Ibushi started unloading on Jay White with some offense. He ended up delivering a standing moonsault to Jay White, to which he ended up going for the cover, and Jay White ended up kicking out. So later on, we had Page end up doing the switchblade with a triple team leading to a German suplex by Ibushi on Jay White. And Jay ended up slipping out of a knee strike. He was looking to go for a Blade Runner, and he ended up escaping another knee strike attempt, and he ended up hitting a Uranagi. So at the end of the match, we had Omega following up with some knee strikes to Juice Robinson. We had Omega end up doing the V-trigger, but he got distracted with a Blade Runner attempt from Jay White, which got turned into a knee strike on Jay White. So Omega, like I said, followed up with some knee strikes for Juice Robinson, but then Takeshita ended up coming in. Takeshita ended up rolling up Omega, and there you go. Bullet Club Gold, Juice Robinson, Jay White, and Konosuke Takeshita ended up winning the match. So Takeshita got a cheap win there on Omega. But overall, very good match this was. Back and forth between these guys. So it was just crazy. So then we had FTR versus the Young Bucks for the World Tag Team Championship. So the Young Bucks made their way out and got a big ovation from the crowd there in Wembley. We had streamers, shooting out. So then FTR ended up coming out. So the crowd was hot for this match here. But very good match this was. We started off with Dax Harwood and Nick Jackson. Both guys ended up locking up, and they were trading holds. And then we had a standoff between them. So we had Dax end up tagging in Cash Wheeler. Cash Wheeler ended up taking Nick Jackson down with a shoulder tackle. And Nick Jackson ended up delivering a hip toss to Cash. Nick ended up making a tag to Matt. So we had Cash end up taking down Matt with a spine buster. And then Cash made the tag to Dax. Dax ended up dropping Matt right back down. And he ended up going for the cover, to which Matt ended up kicking out. So we had all four guys going at it in the ring. It was chaos here. FTR ended up hitting a couple of lariats on the Bucks. So we had the Bucks end up hitting big dives on FTR to the outside. The Bucks continued to attack, and then Matt tagged Nick in, and Nick ended up delivering a 450 splash off the second rope to Cash, and he went for the cover, and Cash ended up kicking out. The Bucks ended up keeping Cash in the corner and away from Cash making the tag to Dax. So we had Matt doing a sunset flip to Cash, and then Nick ended up tagging in. Nick ended up continuing the attack on Cash, and then Nick ended up tagging Matt back in. So tags back and forth from the Bucks here. The Bucks continued to keep Dax away from tagging in Cash. So we had Matt end up getting rolled up by Cash, and Matt ended up kicking out. Matt ended up fighting back. He ended up getting a near fall of his own, and then Cash ended up kicking out. So we had Cash end up delivering an enziguri in the corner. Wheeler ended up finally making the tag to Dax. Dax ended up going on the attack. He ended up dropping the Bucks with suplexes. So we had Matt being suplexed by Dax. Matt ended up escaping after 3 suplexes. And we had Matt end up sending a locomotion up on Dax with 2 Northern Light suplexes. And Dax ended up countering into a suplex of his own. So it was just suplexes here at this point in the matchup here. So now both Matt and Dax were trading suplexes of their own. Dax ended up pinning an inside cradle on Matt, to which Matt ended up kicking out. So Matt ended up responding with a stolen Northern Light suplex on Dax, to which Dax ended up kicking out. We had Dax end up doing another German suplex to Matt, and Matt ended up kicking out. So both men were down. Dax ended up getting to his feet. Nick ended up going for a super kick, but Dax ended up fighting out of it. So Dax ended up dropping Nick, only for Matt to try and roll Dax up, and Dax ended up kicking out. Dax ended up getting a sharpshooter locked in on Matt. So Nick was caught by Cash on the apron. So Cash locked in the sharpshooter on Nick. Nick ended up finally fighting out of the sharpshooter. He ended up helping Matt out with that. So everyone was laid out. Nick ended up getting back up. He ended up going after Dax in the corner. So both teams were up on the turnbuckles. And FTR then ended up coming out on top. Matt ended up catching Dax with a roundhouse kick. And Dax responded with a spike pile driver with an assist by Cash, which was great. So FTR was looking to go for the Shatter Machine, but that got intercepted as Dax ended up folding Nick up for a close near fall. So we had a miscommunication on the apron as Dax knocked Cash off the apron with a backslide, leading to a near fall. So later on, Cash ended up tagging in, and FTR ended up delivering the FTR trigger to Matt Jackson, and then FTR went for the Shatter Machine on Matt. So Cash ended up going for the cover, and Matt ended up kicking out, which was crazy. You hardly see anybody kick out of the Shatter Machine. So at the end of the match, we had FTR end up hitting the Shatter Machine, and they went for the cover, and there you go. FTR end up winning the match, retaining the World Tag Team Championship. Post-match, FTR end up offering a handshake to the Bucks, but the Bucks refused to shake FTR's hands. So the Bucks end up leaving the ring, and that was that. So it looks like we may get another matchup here with FTR and the Bucks sometime down the line. But FTR and the Bucks, they work really well in their matches. But overall, decent match this was between FTR and the Bucks here. Just a very physical matchup this was. And then we had what I considered the best match of the night. The Stadium Stampede match. Eddie Kingston, Penta Miedo, Orange Cassidy, and the Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, versus the Blackpool Combat Club, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, and Santana and Ortiz. So the Blackpool Combat Club and Santana and Ortiz made their way out first. They made their way out through the crowd, and they headed to the ring. And so the Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, made their way out. Of course, Orange Cassidy, and then it was followed up by Penta Miedo, and Eddie Kingston wasting no time coming out there. Eddie Kingston ended up going right at it on Claudio Castagnoli at ringside, and it was just back and forth between these guys. Chaos throughout the match. It was hard to keep up with everything. But Chuck Taylor ended up delivering a dive, but Trent was met with a trash can. Claudio ended up starting to get his revenge on Eddie Kingston as Mox went on the attack at ringside. Eddie Kingston ended up going right back at it with Claudio. Penta ended up running in with a chair on Ortiz and Santana. So he followed up with a sling blade to Santana and Ortiz. So we went backstage and we saw Claudio and Eddie Kingston fighting, backstage alongside Chuck Taylor and Wheeler Yuta. So Mox ended up dropping Penta, and he was looking to go for a lariat. And we had Jon Moxley ended up delivering the paradigm shift on Penta instead. So Mox ended up pulling out a bag, and in the bag was skewers. So Penta was having none of that. He ended up using the skewers on Moxley, and the skewers were just sticking out of Moxley's head. And that was crazy. So that made me, cringe a little bit, with the skewers sticking out of Moxley's head. So Penta ended up dropping Moxley with the Made in Japan, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Moxley ended up kicking out. So Penta set up a couple of chairs, and he was then met by Santana, and we got a peek of the concourse area where Eddie Kingston and Claudio were still going at it. And I liked how it was, divided. We saw what was going on in the ring and what was going on, in the concourse area. So we had Santana end up dropping Penta onto the chairs, and fans were rushing away from Eddie Kingston and Claudio Castagnoli up on the concourse because the fans had to clear away from there. So Santana ended up dropping Penta with a pile driver onto a chair in the ring, and the medics, you had Dr. Sampson, ended up checking in on Penta right after that. Orange Cassidy started taunting Mox with the dangerous kicks, and Moxley got annoyed by that. And of course, Moxley was busted open profusely. So Moxley ended up pulling out a fork, and he drived the fork into Orange Cassidy's head over and over again. And that was crazy. Mox then brutalized Cassidy some more, and then he turned to his attention to Trent Beretta, and we got a peek backstage of Wheeler Yuta beating up Chuck Taylor, and we had Wheeler Yuta joined up with Claudio to go after Eddie Kingston. So we had Eddie Kingston beating up Wheeler with a umbrella, which was provided by Chuck Taylor. So Ortiz and Santana were still on the attack alongside Moxley. So we had Eddie Kingston and Wheeler Yuta. They were inside a food area now, and they were doing some damage back there. Santana and Ortiz continued their attack on Trent Beretta by sending Beretta into a ladder in the corner. Yeah, Moxley ended up bringing in a barbed wire board, which was crazy. He ended up hitting a massive slam to send Trent into the barbed wire board. So Moxley ended up going for the cover, but Trent was able to kick out as Moxley now focused on Orange Cassidy at ringside. So Moxley ended up hitting a pile driver on Trent. He ended up driving him headfirst into the ring steps. Claudio then made his way back to ringside. He ended up going after Trent as he brought Trent up the ramp. And the Blackpool Combat Club had brought the Best Friends up onto the stage. Ortiz then set up a table at ringside, and we saw a ladder being set up on the stage. And then we saw a Mercedes white van arrived. And it was revealed to be, of course, Trent's mom, Sue. So Mox ended up giving Sue a kiss, which sent Trent right off. He ended up going after Moxley as Chuck Taylor ended up coming in. They ended up pulling out plunder from the van to fend off the Blackpool Combat Club. And then we had Penta Oscuro end up coming out to get his revenge on Santana. So they end up climbing a ladder. And this was a scary spot here. The ladder fell apart And I was like, oh shit. So Abrahantes ended up holding the ladder long enough for Penta to hit a destroyer on Santana through the table on the stage, which was great. You had a point in the match where Orange Cassidy started putting duct tape on his fist, and he retrieved a bucket. Inside the bucket was a bottle. He then broke the bottle into the bucket, and Cassidy was putting glass on his taped fist. So Claudio intervened as Moxley ended up coming in. Moxley was looking to go for a pump handle slam to Cassidy, but he was taken down with a DDT by Cassidy. So Eddie Kingston returned to ringside with a chair wrapped in barbed wire. He ended up laying out, Blackpool Combat Club with the barbed wire. And we had Eddie Kingston staring down Moxley, and then Claudio blindsided Kingston. So Kingston ended up pinning a back fist to Claudio Castagnoli. He ended up driving Moxley through the barbed wire board, which was crazy. Orange Cassidy then ended up hitting the orange punch with the taped up glass hand, and he ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Eddie Kingston, Penta El Zero Miedo, Orange Cassidy, and the Best Friends end up winning this Stadium Stampede match. In my opinion, like I said, the best match of the night this was. Really enjoyed this match. Yes, it was kind of a cluster. It was kind of a clusterfuck because it was back and forth and it was going all over the place. But still, it was enjoyable. But my favorite match of the night. And then we had the women's four-way match for the AEW Women's World Championship. Hikaru Shida versus Toni Storm versus Saraya versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. And this was a solid women's match here. We had Saraya end up coming out first. Saraya, of course, in her home country. She ended up coming out with her family to Queen's We Will Rock You. So that was pretty awesome. Having Saraya's family come out there and accompany her to the ring. So we had Toni Storm end up coming out. Toni Storm ended up coming out to God Save the Queen as she headed her way to the ring. And then Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, then made her way out, which was followed by the AEW Women's World Champion Hikaru Shida. So the match got underway. We had all four women going at it. Shida ended up being sent out of the ring as Toni Storm and Saraya focused on Britt Baker. So Saraya and Toni Storm ended up double teaming on Britt Baker. Toni Storm ended up hitting her with a hip attack, and both Saraya and Toni Storm ended up trying to cover Britt Baker, and this led to a disagreement between Saraya and Toni Storm, and that allowed Hikaru Shida to get back into the ring and intervene. So Shida delivered a big knee to even things up. So Shida was in control of the match. She ended up mounting up some punches on Toni Storm. So Britt Baker ended up taking advantage of the situation, and Saraya ended up decking Britt Baker with a kick, which sent Britt Baker out of the ring. Toni Storm ended up sending Britt Baker toward Saraya's mom, who ended up holding Britt Baker up for Toni Storm, but Britt Baker ended up getting away, and that led to Toni Storm hitting Saraya's mother instead, which that pissed off Saraya. So we had Saraya end up going after Toni Storm, and we had Saraya and Toni Storm end up going back in the ring. They end up coming to some blows. Toni Storm was in control of the match at this point. Toni Storm ended up sending Saraya up against the exposed turnbuckle, which brought out Ruby Soho. Ruby Soho ended up trying to restore order within her outcasts, and Ruby Soho was like, oh, no, don't do anything. You remember her neck, because of course Saraya, has a surgically repaired neck. Saraya didn't compete for a long while, even when she was in WWE, because of that neck of hers. With what happened during the matchup, the house show matchup when her and Mercedes, when they were in WWE, came into play. You remember what happened, which made Saraya, not compete for a long while. So Ruby Soho was met with a forearm by Toni Storm, which Ruby Soho was pissed off. She ended up making her way to the back. Shida was back in the ring, as was Britt Baker. So we had Britt Baker end up stomping on Toni Storm's face into the canvas. She ended up shoving Saraya away to make the cover, but Toni Storm ended up kicking out. Britt Baker was looking to go for the lockjaw, but Hikaru Shida returned it to the ring, only for Saraya to get involved. Shida ended up following up with a Falcon Arrow on Britt Baker onto Saraya. She then ended up hitting a Meteor on Saraya, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Saraya ended up kicking out. So Shida ended up staying on top of that with a katana on Saraya. So Shida ended up going for the cover. Britt Baker broke up the pin. She ended up going for the lockjaw on Shida. Shida ended up trying to fight out of the lockjaw. She ended up pitting Britt Baker to the canvas to force the break of the lockjaw. So Saraya and Toni Storm rushed into the ring. Saraya ended up hitting Storm with the nightcap. So Britt Baker was still focused on Hikaru Shida. Saraya ended up covering Toni Storm, and she ended up getting the pin. So there you go. Saraya ended up winning the match, and she is now your new AEW Women's World Champion. Obviously, they were going to give the win to Saraya here, considering this was in her home country. She got a big win in front of the crowd. We had her family come in to celebrate, with her. But really happy for Saraya here. I mean, she was out for a long while. She couldn't compete in the ring because of her neck, eventually leading her, to retire and then to come back. This was a long wait, for Saraya to, come back and win a championship. So good on her. It was a long time coming for Saraya to get her next championship win. So, but overall, solid match this was. And then we had the tag team coffin match. Sting and Darby Allin versus Swerve Strickland and Christian Cage. This was a very good match here. Swerve Strickland got a special entrance as he made his way to the ring. And then out next was Christian Cage. He was wearing, of course, the TNT Championship. Still thinking that he is the TNT Champion when Luchasaurus is the TNT Champion. And then out came Darby Allin and Sting. They got a cinematic entrance, which was awesome. They headed out to the ring to Metallica, which was great. Of course, Sting was Joker Sting. He had the Joker makeup on, which looked badass. So the match started off with Sting and Christian Cage in the ring. The fight quickly shifted to Sting and Swerve at ringside. Darby then retrieved a thumbtack jacket, which was great. So he had two. He had one for himself, and he handed one to Sting. And so Sting and Darby Allin end up giving corner splashes to Prince Nana and Swerve. And then Christian Cage ended up intervening, which led to Christian and Swerve hitting a pair of spears to Sting and Darby Allin. So we had Sting and Swerve end up spilling out to the floor, and Christian Cage end up binding the hands of Darby Allin with some tape. He ended up wrapping Darby's hands with tape. Christian then taunted the crowd. He ended up sending Darby into the turnbuckle, but Darby ended up avoiding attack from Christian. He ended up hitting a no-hands moonsault from the corner, which was great. And then he followed up with a cannonball dive on Swerve. Sting ended up coming by to take the tape off Darby's hands, and Darby ended up grabbing the coffin as Sting lifted Swerve up for a spine buster into the coffin. So Christian ended up knocking the lid closed, which forced Swerve to hit the lid instead of being driven into the coffin. So Darby ended up getting brought back to the ring as Christian Cage ended up grabbing a steel chair. Swerve ended up offering a second chair for a concerto, but Darby ended up narrowly evading it. So Darby was on the apron as Swerve ended up grabbing him, and we had Darby end up hitting a stunner of sorts to Swerve. Swerve was on the table at ringside. Sting leapt off the apron, and the table didn't even break. So Swerve was on the table not for long, and we had Sting end up delivering a second leap, which sent Swerve crashing through the table. So Christian was set up on a chair on the opposite side of the ring. Darby ended up leaping off the top turnbuckle with a missile drop kick to Christian. Sting got Swerve into the coffin as Darby ended up coming along to help close the lid, but Swerve kept his foot out to save himself. Luchasaurus then blindsided both Darby and Sting. Luchasaurus then taunted Darby as Nick Wayne ended up rushing up behind with a skateboard, and we had Luchasaurus end up dropping Nick Wayne onto the skateboard with a chokeslam, which that had to hurt. So we had Swerve end up escaping the coffin. Sting was back on his feet. He ended up going after both Christian Cage and Swerve as Darby slowly made it back to his feet. So Sting ended up sending Swerve onto the closed coffin as Darby ended up stepping onto the top turnbuckle. And we had Darby end up leaping off for the coffin drop onto the coffin, but we had Swerve rolling off of the coffin, and Darby collided onto the lid of the coffin. You just heard a loud thump as Darby ended up coming off the top, and he delivered the coffin drop onto the coffin lid. So we had Sting ended up in the ring with both Swerve and Christian. He had taken both men down, and he was looking to go for the Scorpion Deathlock on Christian. But Christian was in trouble, and Swerve ended up rushing in with a steel chair to Sting's back, which that angered Sting. And so Sting ended up going after Swerve. So Christian was able to intervene. He ended up sending Sting up as Swerve ended up hitting the Swerve Stomp from the top turnbuckle. So the coffin was then brought into the ring as Christian ended up going after Darby on the outside. Swerve pulled Sting into the coffin. He ended up grabbing the baseball bat and tossed it in before going to close the lid. But the bat ended up sticking out enough to keep the coffin open. So Sting was still in this. So Swerve ended up hitting a big kick to even things back up. So at the end of the match, we had Darby end up catching Swerve with a coffin drop, which seemed to break Swerve. And he ended up finally getting Swerve into the coffin. He closed the lid. So there you go. Darby Allin and Sting ended up winning the match. Overall, this was a very good coffin match here. Really enjoyed it. And then we had Will Ospreay versus Chris Jericho. So Chris Jericho ended up coming out first, and he was performing Judas with Fozzy. Fozzy was also there as Chris Jericho ended up heading to the ring, which that was really cool. A performance of Judas from Fozzy with Chris Jericho performing. So then out came Will Ospreay. So we got footage of Rev Pro from the previous night, showing Jericho attacking Ospreay leading up to the match. So the match got underway. This was a very good match here between Ospreay and Jericho. Just both guys worked really well here. So both Jericho and Ospreay circled the ring. They ended up blocking up. So they started trading blows at each other. Ospreay ended up catching Jericho with a drop kick, which sent him out of the ring. So we had Ospreay hit the Sky Twister press onto Jericho on the floor. Ospreay ended up bringing Jericho back into the ring. So Ospreay ended up going for the cover. Jericho ended up kicking out. Jericho was starting to fight back at Ospreay. So both men ended up getting back to their feet. They were trading blows again with each other. Ospreay ended up getting the upper hand. Jericho was sent into the corner as Ospreay ended up hitting a chop. He ended up sending Jericho into the opposite corner. So Jericho ended up catching Ospreay with a drop kick to the outside. And then Jericho followed up with a baseball slide to Ospreay. So Jericho ended up landing some chops to Ospreay until Ospreay started to fight back. So both guys ended up on the apron. Jericho ended up dropping Ospreay onto the apron with a German suplex. So both men went back to the ring. Jericho ended up going on the attack on Ospreay. He had pinned a vertical suplex and a cover to Ospreay, to which Ospreay ended up kicking out. Jericho ended up sending Ospreay up against the ropes. He was continuing to hit Ospreay, and he ended up standing Ospreay up for a chop, but Ospreay started to fight back. He ended up pinning a corkscrew kick to Jericho. So Ospreay was looking to go for some offense on Jericho. So Ospreay ended up going for the cover, and Jericho ended up kicking out. So Jericho ended up fighting out of a pile driver. He ended up sending Ospreay into the corner. So both guys went back and forth in the corner, which led to Jericho up on Ospreay with some mountain punches. And Jericho delivered a hurricanrana on Ospreay. So Jericho ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay ended up kicking out. You had Jericho was looking to go for the Judas effect, but Ospreay ended up blocking it. Ospreay ended up hitting the Oz cutter for a near fall. Ospreay was looking to go for a Stormbreaker that got countered by Jericho, and then Ospreay ended up countering. Jericho countered that and locked in the walls of Jericho on Ospreay. Don Callis, who was also out there, Don Callis leapt up on the ring apron to distract Aubrey Edwards. Sam Guevara countered that with a bat to Will Ospreay's head to knock him out. So we had Aubrey Edwards end up checking on Ospreay, who managed to stay in the match. So Ospreay ended up fighting out of the walls. Ospreay then ended up hitting the Spanish Fly on Jericho. He ended up going for the cover, to which Jericho ended up kicking out. So later on, we had Jericho end up slipping out of a Stormbreaker by Ospreay. That distracted Aubrey Edwards, and we had Jericho end up hitting a low blow on Ospreay, and then Jericho delivered the Judas effect to Ospreay. So Jericho ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay kicked out of that. Ospreay kicked out of the Judas effect. Couldn't believe that. Even Jericho couldn't believe that. So we had Ospreay end up hitting a combo hidden blade and a Judas effect to Jericho, and then he followed up with a Stormbreaker, and then Ospreay ended up going for the cover, and Jericho kicked out of that, which was crazy. So Will Ospreay at the end of the match, he ended up hitting the Stormbreaker. He ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Will Ospreay ended up winning the match. Post-match, Ospreay ended up celebrating his win on Jericho. Guevara was trying to check in on Jericho, and then Jericho ended up pushing Guevara away. He ended up leaving the ring with Guevara left alone, and that was basically that. So it looks like, there's going to be tension between Jericho and Guevara. So, but overall, very good match it was between Ospreay and Jericho. Both guys gave it all they got. Ospreay is just amazing in the ring. Jericho, of course, also, long time, legend in Jericho. And then we had the House of Black versus the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. This was for the World Trios Championship, and very good match this was. So what was really cool was when the House of Black came out, they were wearing an attire in honor of, Bray Wyatt winning the Rotunda. So that was good on them. Their attires looked amazing. So then the Acclaim came out. Of course, Max Caster did his rap. And the match got underway. We had Chaos ensue in and out of the ring. Malachi Black ended up taking out Max Caster while Buddy Matthews and Anthony Bowens were back in the ring. Bowens ended up hitting the guillotine on Buddy Matthews, and then he ended up hitting Malachi with the guillotine, only for Buddy Matthews to end up hitting a dive. So Billy Gunn was in the ring. He was stopped by the House of Black. Brody King was in the ring, but he was taken out by Billy Gunn. He ended up gearing up to go for a dive on Brody King, but Julia Hart ended up intervening. She ended up slapping Billy Gunn in the face. Billy Gunn then started to yell at Julia Hart before the Acclaimed ended up hitting the Sesame Timbers on Julia Hart, which was crazy. So that didn't set well with the House of Black. We had Brody King end up going after Billy Gunn on the outside. Billy Gunn ended up dodging a big splash against the barricade. Brody ended up crashing through the barricade instead as Billy Gunn ended up grabbing a chair, throwing it at Brody. Bowens ended up getting sent flying out of the ring. Billy Gunn ended up getting back in the ring, but he was taken down by both Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews. But Billy Gunn was in control. He ended up sending Buddy Matthews out of the ring. He ended up going to look for the Famouser on Malachi Black. So he ended up countering the end into a near fall before Malachi Black ended up kicking out. You had Buddy Matthews ended up blindsiding Bowens as Brody ended up going to work, and they ended up knocking Bowens down hard. So we had, at the end of the match, the Acclaimed ended up getting up on Brody King. They ended up delivering a triple stack cover, scoring the win. So the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn end up winning the match, and they are your new AEW World Trios Champions. So post-match, the House of Black end up seemingly unwilling to let go of the Trios Championships, but they end up shaking hands, the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn to the House of Black. So the House of Black end up handing the titles over to the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. So we had the Acclaimed end up getting on the mic. We had them hyping up Billy Gunn, saying them they made good on their promise to help Billy Gunn achieve gold one more time. So Bowens ended up calling for Wembley to throw those scissors up. And that was basically how we got one of the biggest scissor parties in wrestling history to a big ovation there in Wembley. So it was just amazing. But overall, very good match this was. Knew that the House of Black were going to drop the other titles to the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. Main event. MJF versus Adam Cole. AEW World Championship on the line. Adam Cole ended up making his way out. And then MJF ended up coming out. So MJF ended up coming out. He was wearing a devil mask. And so he took off the mask before heading into the ring. And then the match got underway. And very good match this was. MJF and Adam Cole, both of these guys just delivered here. Was looking forward to this match. They won the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship earlier in the night during the All In 0 Hour by defeating Aussie Open. So both MJF and Adam Cole end up soaking in the approval of the Wembley crowd. So we had both MJF and Adam Cole staring each other down. They end up heading out of the ring to grab their Better Than You Baby shirts. And they end up putting on the shirts, and they finally locked up. Both Cole and MJF were trying to one-up each other. MJF ended up avoiding a super kick by Cole. So MJF ended up trying to get the crowd on his side. So MJF ended up calling for sportsmanship, which led to a chant from the Wembley crowd. So he ended up giving Adam Cole a thumb to the eye. And Adam Cole ended up going after MJF. He dropped MJF, went for the cover, and MJF kicked out. MJF got sent to the corner as Adam Cole ended up going on the attack. And MJF ended up reversing things on Adam Cole. Adam Cole pulled in the ref to stop MJF in his tracks. and he ended up pulling MJF into the turnbuckle to turn things around. So Adam Cole was just being down on MJF. MJF was then looking to go for a dive, and he thought better of it, only for Adam Cole to hit MJF with a big super kick. So Adam Cole ended up going for the cover. MJF ended up kicking out. Cole started mouthing off at MJF, saying they may be friends, but he is better than MJF. So Cole ended up pulling the shirt off of MJF. He pulled the "Better Than You Baby" shirt off of MJF, and that angered MJF. He then got to his feet. MJF started unloading on Adam Cole, and then he ended up hitting a body slam to Adam Cole. MJF ended up taking Cole to the corner, started unloading a flurry of offense on Adam Cole, and then MJF bit Adam Cole's head, which was crazy. So we had Cole end up rolling out of the ring for a breather. MJF ended up firing the crowd back up. We had MJF end up seeming surprised as he brought Adam Cole back into the ring, and MJF ended up going for the cover. Adam Cole ended up kicking out. So Adam Cole ended up turning things around. He sent MJF into the corner. MJF fought right back. He ended up hitting a sunset flip to Adam Cole. And then this turned into a series of near falls, which I fucking hate when they do this. You know, I fucking hate these series of near falls where the ref is counting 1, 2, then they counter 1, 2, then they counter again 1, 2. I'm sick of that. It is so fucking stupid. I hate when they do that. Because, oh, you're going to get a pinfall. You're going to roll up again and get a pinfall. It's like, oh, you're not going to get a win with just a series of near falls. So later on, we had, counter after counter, which led to a series of kicks by Adam Cole. MJF ended up catching Cole with a powerbomb, with an added backbreaker knee, to which MJF ended up going for the cover, and Adam Cole ended up kicking out. So we had MJF ended up getting to his feet. He climbed up the turnbuckle for a Panama Sunrise, only get knocked down by Adam Cole. Adam Cole ended up hitting a big DDT on MJF. He ended up going for the cover, and MJF got his foot on the rope. So we had Adam Cole being enraged by this. He ended up sending MJF out of the ring. He ended up sending MJF into the ring steps, and he followed up with a brainbuster onto the steps, which was crazy. So we had Adam Cole going into the ring. The ref was counting, and as soon as the ref counted 9, MJF ended up leaping into the ring to break up the count, which was crazy. So Cole ended up climbing the turnbuckle. He was waiting to go for the Panama Sunrise, but MJF collapsed and rolled out of the ring. So Cole ended up pursuing MJF, but he was then tripped up as MJF ended up clearing off the commentary table. He ended up bringing Cole over, telling himself he has to do it. And that it turned into a tombstone pile driver. So Cole ended up sending MJF up. He ended up hitting the tombstone pile driver onto the announce table, which the announce table did not collapse. It was indestructible. So we had later on MJF delivering a rolling elbow strike to Adam Cole, which led into a Canadian Destroyer by Adam Cole, which was great. So we had both guys end up getting back to the feet. They were shouting for a double clothesline that ended up connecting. But do they cover each other? Yes. Both MJF and Adam Cole covered each other. The ref counted it, and the ref called for the bell, and the match was ruled as a draw. But as soon as Justin Roberts ended up making the announcement, Adam Cole grabbed the mic, and he said, "Oh, let's give this match 5 more minutes." So MJF was like, "No, because 5 minutes isn't enough." So MJF was like, "We're going till there's a winner in fucking Wembley." So the bell ended up ringing. We went right back to the match, and the ref ended up getting knocked out. So this drove MJF to grab a chair from ringside, and he tossed it into the hands of Adam Cole. So, of course, they're throwing the chair back and forth, hot potatoing with the chair, and, they were waiting to see who gets caught by the ref with the chair. So Adam Cole dropped to the canvas, and then MJF wrapped the chair around his neck, and then he hit the canvas. So the ref finally got up. He ended up finding himself arguing with Adam Cole. And then MJF took the chair off of him. He ended up rolling Adam Cole up, to which Adam Cole ended up kicking out. And the match ended up on the apron. Adam Cole ended up catching MJF with a straightjacket German suplex onto the ring apron, which was great. So we had Adam Cole end up deciding to hit the champ with the Panama Sunrise onto the floor. So Adam Cole brought MJF into the ring, and he still only got a near fall. And there was a point where MJF ended up reaching down deep. He pulled out the Dynamite Diamond ring as he got to his feet, and MJF seemed uneasy about, what he wants to do. So Adam Cole tried to wake the ref up because the ref was knocked out again. So we had MJF ended up putting the ring back as Roderick Strong ended up running in. Roderick Strong ended up low blowing MJF. Roderick Strong ended up telling Adam Cole to go for the Panama Sunrise, and Adam Cole obliged to this. The ref was still out. Adam Cole ended up dropping the boom on MJF. So Cole ended up going for the cover. The ref was still out. So the ref was finally stirring. So the ref ended up delivering a slow count, which led to MJF ended up kicking out at 2. So Roderick Strong threw the World Championship into the ring toward Adam Cole. Strong was telling Adam Cole to do what he needs to do. So Cole then removed his shirt. He kept focusing on his own intentions as he picked up the World Championship. MJF was on his knees as Adam Cole ended up sizing him up. But Adam Cole threw the World Championship out of the ring, which pissed off Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong left the ringside area. Adam Cole ended up yelling at Strong as he turned his attention to MJF. So MJF ended up catching Adam Cole with a small package as the ref ended up making the count. So MJF got the pin, and there you go. MJF ended up winning the match, retaining the AEW World Championship. Post-match, Cole was beside himself. He crawled to the corner to process what just happened. MJF ended up trying to cheer Adam Cole up, saying that these people still love him. So the crowd was chanting for Cole and MJF to hug it out. MJF ended up telling Adam Cole to watch this. He ended up grabbing the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship belts from ringside, and MJF ended up reminding Cole that we still have these. But Cole shoved the titles out of the ring. MJF was pissed about this. He ended up running Adam Cole down, and he ended up throwing the World Championship at Adam Cole. So MJF ended up telling Cole do what he wants with it. So Roderick Strong ended up returning to rail Cole up into doing the dirty deed and hitting MJF with the World Championship. But Cole couldn't bring himself to hit MJF with the World Championship. Cole then ended up dropping the World Championship, and we had MJF and also Adam Cole hug it out, which got the crowd to react hard for that. So big ovation when MJF and Adam Cole hugged it out. So confetti ended up pouring out, and we had the Kingdom end up holding back Roderick Strong, and we got pyro to celebrate, one hell of a event this was. So that's when they ended up announcing that next year All In's going to be at Wembley, which is great. So pretty much that was basically how All In went off the air. Overall, very good match this was between MJF and Adam Cole. They both delivered, and All In was one hell of an event. This was a fantastic show. And this, in my opinion, was AEW's WrestleMania in All In. So, but very awesome show this was. A 10 out of 10 show. The crowd in Wembley was on fire all night. Just absolutely amazing. But anyways, that's it for my review of AEW All In. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all later tonight with the Monday Night Raw review. Obviously, in my opinion, Monday Night Raw is going to be a shit show tonight. And I'm going to say, we go from All In to a shit show in Monday Night Raw. I'll be like, how do we go from that? But anyways, see you all later tonight for Monday Night Raw.